Hi, my name is Leland Green, and I'm the Training Department Manager with Yamaha and the Pro Audio Division. Here today at Full Compass, and we're going to talk to you about the TF series of digital mixing consoles. Now, in the TF series, you have three different models: the TF5, which I'm standing in front of right here, the TF3, and the TF1. In terms of comparison between those models, the TF5 is capable of 40 mixing channels with 2 stereo returns and 2 stereo effects. On the TF3, you can also do 40 mono inputs with 2 stereo returns and 2 stereo effects. And on your TF1, you have the capability of mixing 32 input channels, 32 mono input channels, with 2 stereo input returns and also 2 stereo effects. Now, in terms of the analog inputs on those boards, you've got 32 analog ins on your TF5, 24 analog ins on your TF3, and 16 analog ins on your TF1. Each one of those consoles can be expanded, though, in terms of their input capacity using the Dante card, which will be available. Now, in terms of the output capacity on the boards, you have 20 buses available on each one, and you also have 16 Omni outputs available on each one of these consoles as well. Now, when you first start up the console, what you're going to see is a help menu or a tutorial which will guide you through the use of the console. And this is something that you can turn off in the preferences section, or you can just leave it there. So if you have new users who are coming in and they're not familiar with the board, then this tutorial will guide them through its operation. But really, when you start to use the console, you're going to find that it's very simple and easy to use. Now, one of the things that we love about this console here is going to be this nice 7-inch touchscreen that we have. And with this 7-inch touchscreen, you have the option of scrolling up and down on each one of your channels to get more information, or scrolling either to the left or to the right so that you can get additional information about your individual inputs. In terms of operating the board here, we can touch on one of these parameters, touch on it once to activate our touch and turn knob here, and then go ahead and touch on it one more time, and this will bring up that selected parameter. Now, the first one we're looking at here is the gain finder. This is something that is unique to the Yamaha brand of consoles, and this is our first evaluation of that here on the TF series. And the way the gain finder works is similar to your guitar tuner. You know, it's got some LEDs here which are going to guide you into making sure you have proper signal level coming into each one of those inputs. Just making sure that we get that green section nice and lit up and everything will be fine. Right below that, we start to get into our EQ section here. And on your EQs, you have a 4-band parametric EQ on every one of your inputs. We can make adjustments to this EQ using the touch screen itself. So I can grab on the touch screen here and I can use the multi-touch functionality there. Or we can also use something which is known as one knob EQ. Now, the one knob EQ parameter is again unique to the Yamaha brand of consoles here. And when it comes down to the one knob EQ, you have two different modes when you're working on your input channel. You have vocal mode and you have intensity mode. Now, when we are in vocal mode, as we start to adjust our one knob EQ using the touch and turn knob here, it's going to give you some common settings that all of us mix engineers use when we're working on a vocal. So one of the first things we usually do is add in a high pass filter. And as I start to turn this knob here, we're going to get that high pass filter. Next, you may start to take a little bit of mud out. And as I continue to turn here, we'll see that some of those low mids start to be removed from that signal. And as I continue to go along, we start to add some presence up here at the top, and then continue adding presence and adjusting the frequency onto where that presence is going to stay. So for those of you who are maybe not very familiar with mixing, don't have a lot of experience, using that one knob EQ is going to be a great starting point for you when you're working on one of those vocal channels. And then you also have some other things in here which are going to be very beneficial to you as well, but I'll get into those in just a second. Continuing on after the EQ, let's get into the two dynamic sections here. So the first dynamic section is a gate, and you have a gate on every single one of your input channels. And then your second dynamic section is going to be a compressor, and you also have a compressor on each one of your input channels. Now with the compressor, you can use it in either one knob mode, or you can use it in the standard mode where you can go in and adjust every single parameter. It's really up to you as a user. You know, these series of consoles has features which are going to be good for those of you who are just starting out and those of you who have been mixing for a long time. It's up to you to decide if you want to use those features or not. So you're not completely locked in to just using them all the time. All right. Now, just beneath our dynamic section, you have the other standards that you would expect in a mixing console like this. You have access to your reverb and delay, or your two effects units, which are located right over here. And if I wanted to add reverb to one of my signals, I can just touch on this first effects parameter here, and then go ahead and start dialing up my touch and turn knob, because that's going to adjust the send level for that channel going off to the reverb. And of course, my returns are already turned up because of the preset that I'm working off of. Now, in terms of presets, let me talk about those for a little bit here. You have presets for your scenes, and you also have presets for your input channels and your output channels. Your presets for your scenes are going to give you some starting points just in case you need that additional help. So you have one preset that says general band, and in that preset it already has channels labeled as kick, snare, hi-hat. Has a little bit of a pre-dial in going on your head amp, some presettings there for your EQ as well, just to get you into the general ballpark. And then you also have additional settings for the other channels, your guitars, your keys, and your vocals. You know, nice starting point for you if you're not very familiar with mixing. Some other starting points that you may find beneficial are going to be found here inside of our libraries. Now, with these libraries, this is something, again, that's very unique to the TF series of digital mixing consoles. You're going to have presets for your input channels that are related to specific microphones. We've been working with the manufacturers such as Shure, Sennheiser, and Audio-Technica to develop presets for some of their famous mics and most commonly used mics that are here inside of the console. And when you call up one of those presets, again, you're going to get head amp settings and EQ settings, which are going to get you in the right ballpark for using that particular mic. And it's also set up to be used on specific instruments as well. So using this particular Shure mic on this type of kick drum, if that's what you have set up, then it's going to be dialed in for you already right here on the console. Now, in terms of the output section, let's talk about that a little bit. I'm going to touch on one of my fader bank keys down here on the left-hand side, touch on the one that says output, and that's going to bring me up to my output buses. As I mentioned before, you have 20 auxiliaries available here on the console. And your first 8 auxiliaries are set up for a mono output. So if you want to use these as a send off to a monitor wedge up on stage, it's already pre-configured for you. You also have a graphic EQ, which is already inserted on that bus output so that you can make additional adjustments if you need to. Now, the last half here of your auxiliaries, those are going to be configured as stereo outputs, and we can use those for sends to in-ear monitors, or we can use them as additional effect returns. You know, they already have an effect unit inserted on each one of those stereo auxiliaries, so that if you do want to use an additional effects unit, so you have one reverb for one of your vocalists and a separate reverb for a different vocalist, you have that capability of assigning one of those to those stereo auxiliaries down here on the second half of the system. In terms of sending signal to those outputs, we're going to do that using our sends on faders mode. Now, what sends on faders does is it allows you to use these long throw faders here on the deck to assign individual input channels to each one of those outputs. And we can select those outputs using these buttons over here on the right-hand side of the console. So if I wanted to send signals off to auxiliary number 2, I would select auxiliary number 2 in my sends on faders mode here, and making sure I'm looking at my input bank of faders, and I could assign kick, snare, maybe a little bass, maybe some guitars, and some vocals off to that mix. It's really that simple. If I need to go off to the next auxiliary, let's say auxiliary number 3, I just press that button on the right-hand side of the console, and those faders are now going to adjust, letting me see how much signal I'm sending from each one of these input channels off to that auxiliary bus. Now, when it comes to adjusting any of these send parameters, you also have another option. And one of those options is our monitor mix application, which is available for your portable devices. Now, with the monitor mix application, you can assign each one of those portable devices to a specific auxiliary. That way, the band member up on stage can adjust their own signal to their own aux to get it tailored just the way they want. In addition to the Monitor Mix application, you also have our Stage Mix application, which can be used to control the entire console. You also have the TF Editor, which also can be used on your PC or your Mac to control all of the console parameters as well. When it comes down to Stage Mix and TF Editor, what you see on the screen is exactly what you're going to see in those applications. So if you're not very familiar with the console, you can quickly learn how to use it by downloading those applications for free from our website. Now, where should we use this console? Where are some great places that we can use this? Goes for many different types of venues, whether it be a nightclub or a church or a performing arts center. Any one of those venues can take advantages of the capabilities that you have here within the console. And it doesn't matter if you're a novice user or a well-seasoned, experienced engineer, you do have all the tools that you need to perform your job here inside of the TF Series digital console. Thank you again for joining us here at Full Compass. My name is Leland Green with Yamaha in the Pro Audio division. And if you want to learn more about this console, please visit fullcompass.com or contact your Full Compass sales representative.